Hello and welcome to the Dance Yourself Brave show, where we get real about the struggles dancers face, from confidence battles to self-doubt, and how dance has the power to make us braver, stronger, and more unstoppable in every area of life. I'm your host, Mariana Santos, founder of Brazily Fitness. And whether you're a seasoned dancer, a dance instructor, dance lover, or someone who's always wanted to dance but feels a little intimidated to start, this show is for you. Expect honest conversations, inspiring stories, and simple ways to bring more dance into your life, whether that's in the studio, on stage, or right in your living room. And if you're a dance instructor, we've got you covered with tips on how to grow your dance business, attract more students, and create a bigger impact through your passion for movement. So if you're ready to step out of your comfort zone, own your movement, and dance yourself brave, let's do this. Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Dance Yourself Brave show. I'm your host, Mariana Santos, and I couldn't be more excited to be here talking to you. I've had an idea to start a podcast for about a year. And, I just kept putting it off, but I also wasn't sure exactly which direction to take it. And I wanted it to help people in some way. And just a couple months ago, it hit me, what I do through my dance fitness program, Brazily Dance, it goes far beyond just burning calories or, having fun. What I aim to do with my classes is to help people use dance as a tool to chase their dreams. So ultimately, over time, they become more courageous, more confident to really do what they're meant to do in the world. So that's why I decided to call the show the Dance Yourself Brave show, because it's all about looking at dance as a different way. Of course, it's fun and all those endorphins that get released, everything is great about that. But it's so much deeper than that, because I truly believe that each and every single one of us were put on this planet with a mission, a purpose that we're supposed to fulfill. And sometimes it takes a while to hear that calling, but when we do start to hear it, it feels big and scary, right? We think, well, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, but how can I do it? It's too big. I don't know where to start, right? And then we end up not following through because we just don't believe in ourselves enough. So I believe when you start to dance, that's when you start to build that courage. You learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Because when you go into a dance class, you have no idea what to expect. Everything's new. And it teaches you perseverance, right? To just keep going, even when you don't have all the answers. Just learn to be a beginner. And that's what is necessary no matter what you're aiming to achieve in life. We have to go into everything with a beginner mindset and realize that we don't have all the answers. And when we take that first step, the next step will show up, and then along the way we'll find, support system, and that's great. But you have to be willing to fail and get back up every time that you fall down. And that's what I believe dance is all about. So with this episode, I just wanted to introduce myself a bit, because maybe you haven't heard about me before. Maybe you don't follow my company, Brazily Fitness, on social media yet. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background to how dance entered my life and why I find it so powerful and why it's so important for me to spread this message. So I mentioned my company's name is Brazily Fitness. I was born and raised here in Canada. So usually the first question that people ask me is like, well, Brazily Fitness, Brazil, what does that have to do with you? You're in Canada. And so just rewinding a little bit, my parents are Brazilian. So even though, I was born and raised here and my parents spoke to me in Portuguese, I didn't really speak the language. Like I understood it, and I would always answer in English. My sisters and I would do the same thing. But when I was 14, my dad got a job in São Paulo, Brazil. And at the time I was super shy, self-conscious. I was that kid who, hated public speaking, hated to be around people. I was that kid who hated gym class. So I was always the last one chosen for sports teams and things like that. And I just did not jive well with sports. And to be honest, I still don't. So when I got the news about, having to move to Brazil as a teenager, I wasn't thrilled about it. Let's put it that way. So, I had to adapt to a new culture, learn the language, right? I had to learn the Brazilian lifestyle, and I had to finish high school in Brazil. So it was quite a challenge. So I was all of a sudden in this country where people really valued their appearance and, people are more outgoing and more social. And I just didn't feel like I fit in. So for a while, it was a struggle. Over time, I actually developed an eating disorder and it was very difficult, but it felt like it was, when I look back at it, I realized that it was just because it was the one thing in my life that I had control over. So I just decided, I'm not going to eat and, I'm going to fit the mold that I think that I'm supposed to be. And that was very tough to go through. And I remember I came back to Canada once to visit over the summer. And everyone was like, wow, like you look so great. Like you've lost so much weight. When in reality, I was miserable, right? Like I just did not, like I felt just like my eyes were like sunken in and just completely malnourished, right? So I ended up getting help for that and ended up falling in love with fitness. I joined a local fitness club and started to get really deep into fitness classes. So I became obsessed with the Les Mills programs. I had never heard about them before. So I started doing body combat, body jam, body pump, and I also started doing Brazilian music and dance classes and fell in love with all of that. And I slowly started to break out of my shell. So I was still very shy, but I felt more confident, right? Like not, it's definitely, this is what I try to tell people. It's not something that happens overnight. But it was definitely a big change, like from when I moved to Brazil and, 3 years later when I was getting ready to move back to Canada. And I remember actually that I was like very extreme, right? So first I was very extreme with, controlling my eating habits. And then I became very extreme with fitness. So I would go to the gym every day after school and I would spend hours there, like class after class. And I remember that I actually, when I was 15 or 16, I got mono, which is the kissing disease, right? Like it's transmitted through saliva. And I actually got it after my first kiss because I was super lucky. And anyway, I also got pneumonia at the same time. So I was very weak and I spent 2 weeks at the hospital. And then after that, I was told that I wasn't going to be able to do any exercise for 6 weeks. That was like soul crushing, right? Because I just loved to be at the gym, especially at the time. My favorite programs were Body Combat and Body Jam. My sister would go to the gym with me. So I decided that, okay, well, I can't work out, but I want to just be there, right? So every day after school, I would go to the gym and just watch the classes because I started to become very like into choreography and learning choreography. I wanted to be that one who learned the choreography as fast as possible. So I would sit there and I remember at the time there was a new release. So I wanted to learn all the choreography so that when I had the go ahead to start working out again, I already knew all the choreography and, I wouldn't have to start from scratch. And so I did that every day for 6 weeks. I would go to the gym and just watch the classes, sit in the back. I remember though, after 6 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm going to go do my first class. But because my body was still recovering, I couldn't last like more than maybe 10 minutes. Like I just couldn't do it. And that was, very disappointing. And I had to, learn to build up my stamina again and just listen to my body, right? So after all of that, finally I recovered, got more into fitness classes and everything and decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to help people feel healthy and active and find what makes them feel alive, right? Because when I was growing up in school, I don't know if things have changed, but I felt like the only way to be active was to play sports. And, my parents didn't have money to put me in like extracurricular activities. So I didn't get introduced to dance at a young age. Well, actually, my mom put me in ballet classes. So my sister and we went to one ballet class. And I remember my mom says that we didn't want to go back because the teacher wanted us to do, that butterfly stretch with your feet together and you lean forward. And she would say, like, the cue that she used was, oh, smell your feet. And we went home and we were like, we don't want to do this class because the teacher makes us smell our feet and we don't want to do it. And like, apparently that was enough for my mom to not make us go back, which now looking back, I'm like, I wish she had forced us into it a little bit more. But so I just realized that there are different ways to get active. And I wanted to help people who were maybe in similar situation as me. So I came back to Canada, went to college, started working as a personal trainer, started getting into group fitness. And the first program I started to train for was Body Combat because I loved it so much, right? But if you've done body combat, it's an intense program, right? Like it doesn't really fly to be this like super shy, quiet instructor for body combat. And so as I was going through my training, I remember that I would practice with my team leader and stuff. And I remember once she told me, you know what, Mariana, like, I just don't think this is for you. Like, I think maybe you should try different things, or maybe you focus on personal training. I don't remember exactly how she worded it, but she made it seem as if like teaching fitness was just not in my future. When she told me that, I was like, you know what, like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Also, I started to realize that when I'm teaching fitness, like, you know, on stage teaching, I know that I'm shy, but everyone who's walking in through that door to come to my class, they don't know who I am. They, you know, could probably think that I am the most extroverted person, most outgoing person out there. So no one else knows I'm shy except me. So I decided to create this like on stage Mariana. And the on stage instructor Mariana was the most confident version of myself possible. I was like Beyonce level confidence. And then slowly that helped me, you know, open up. And my team leader said even that she had never seen anyone, you know, just switch. Like it was like a light switch went off. And, you know, eventually I submitted my video, got assessed and passed and became an instructor. And then my classes started to fill up. And it was funny, though, because I was still very introverted. I am still an introvert. And so because I was so young, I started teaching when I was 18. So I would, you know, go clubbing and things like that. And because I used to teach all over town, sometimes I would run into people who have been to my classes before. And they'd be like, oh my God, I do your class and I love it and blah, blah, blah. And they would just expect me to be like the life of the party because that's how it seemed, right? When they came to my class. But when I was like at the club dancing, I was like doing my own thing and didn't want to like draw attention to myself. So it was really interesting to see that. So, you know, I kept working as a personal trainer, got certified after body combat. I got certified in body pump and then body jam. And then I auditioned to become the Body Jam team leader in Ottawa. So that was great too, because I was the youngest team leader that they had ever hired. And it was a great experience, you know, because I was able to audition instructors, mentor them, host practices. And it was a great, like, it was my first real experience in leadership. And it was amazing. And doing a program that I loved Body Jam, and just started to fall more and more in love with dance in general. And after that, Zumba got launched. And I remember I took one of the first Zumba trainings in Canada, like so long ago. And it was like, I didn't necessarily love all the Zumba choreography. Like I wanted the class to be more dancey, like more choreographed. I think because I was used to body jam or because I had done classes in Brazil, I just liked that style a little bit better. So I ended up getting licensed to teach Zumba, but I never used any of the Zumba choreography. And I always did my own choreography, which was great because it was the first experience I had as a choreographer, because with all the Les Mills programs, they were all pre-choreographed, which was amazing because they gave me the foundation, like to be the instructor I am today, right? They taught me about cueing, musicality, stage presence and engaging with your members. It was a very thorough trainings, and I'm so grateful that I went through them. But with Zumba, it helped me learn how to choreograph, which was something that was very important, especially for what I'm doing today, right? And that's why I like to tell people, like, sometimes you're going through things and they're not exactly what you expected them to be, but there's always something that you have to learn in that season of your life, right? Because although Zumba wasn't exactly the program I wanted, but it still gave me skills that are so important to my life today. When I was 25, something just hit me where I was like, you know what? Like, I can't stand living in this cold weather anymore. And I decided to move back to Brazil on my own, like no plan, no money, nothing. And I was like, you know what? It's now or never. I have nothing tying me down. So I ended up going back to Brazil by myself and went down south where my dad's family is from, stayed with my grandma, stayed there for about a year. And then it's also cold in the south though, right? So I was like, you know what? This is not what I want. Like, I want somewhere warm. And I ended up meeting someone on Facebook, and I was like, who was renting a room in Rio, which was my dream place to live. I was like, hey, can you rent me a room? And after a few weeks, I was in Rio with like I said, no money, no plan. I think I had like $500 or something in my pocket. And I realized, okay, I'm going to have to find a job like fast. And I wouldn't be necessarily able to work with fitness in Brazil because they have different regulations and everything. So I was like, what can I do? And within 3 weeks, like I started, applying to teach English. And within 3 weeks, I got a job teaching English, and, everything kind of started to fall into place. But yet again, that's something that I did not want to do, did not feel like I had a calling to be like an English teacher. But I was like, I have to do what I have to do, right? And it was also really cool to see that, like, this time that I went to Brazil, I went with a completely different mindset. Of course, I was older, but also, like, it was my choice to be in Brazil, right? The first time I had no choice as a teenager. My dad got a job there, and so I had to go. But this time it was all on me. And so my mindset was completely different. So I got much deeper into learning the language, deeper into the culture. I remember when I was a kid in school the first time, and I would say something wrong in Portuguese, people would say things like, oh, you hear that? It's so cute. She said that wrong. And that, like, I would hate that. and then, but in reality, now when I look back at it, I was just looking for any excuse to not speak Portuguese. So anytime I heard any kind of like negative feedback, or even if they really just did think I was cute, speaking slightly wrong, I just used that as an excuse to not do what I had to do, right? So the second time, I still had an accent. I learned very little the first time, like just enough to get by in school, because like I said, my mindset wasn't great around that. But this time I was like, you know what? I'm just going to talk the way that I need to talk. And the more I talk, like, the better it'll get. And yes, people still made the same kind of comments, like, oh, did you hear that? She said this, like this. This time, though, my attitude was just like, yeah, I'm cute. That's just me, And so it was just really my reaction is what changed. And and then also through teaching English, I discovered, more skills on teaching, which also apply to fitness. Also, this was like in 2013 almost 2014. And it was my goal to participate in the World Cup that was going to be hosted in Brazil. And I wanted to be a volunteer, do anything, because I love that whole like soccer vibe. Just like rooting for Brazil was always super fun around the World Cup. And through one of my English students, I actually met someone who was hiring for the World Cup. And I actually got hired as a stadium manager. And so I traveled to a few different cities and, got to work at some of the games. I watched the final match, and it was incredible. And that further developed my leadership skills. And when I came back to Rio after that, I actually met my husband taking his dance class. So it was awesome, like, because we really connected through our mutual love for music, and like, especially Brazilian music and dance. And we've been together for 10 years. And about 6.5 years ago, we started thinking about starting a family. And I was like, you know what, like, it's better to do that in Canada, right? Like, unfortunately, Rio is still a pretty violent place. And, cost of living where we were living was extremely high. And we had opened an English school, but it was really tough to make ends meet. So we were like, you know what, let's go back to Canada. So he came to live in super cold Canada with me. And I already, at that time, I started to have all like this calling. Remember, I talked about how we all have this voice, this calling. And I started to hear that voice about, Brazilian fitness. Even like the name came to me and what I wanted to do, like just to share the Brazilian music, dance experience, like the lifestyle with everyone, just to bring more joy and confidence, right? Because I noticed in Brazil that they have this way of just living in the moment and taking things one day at a time, and not taking things so seriously, right? Like, so much more spontaneity. Like in Canada, I feel like every time we want to make plans, we have to, look at our schedules and be like, okay, are you free this day? Whereas in Brazil, they're like, okay, let's meet now. Let's do this. Let's walk over to the beach. And I mean, I think that makes life more enjoyable, right? So I started to feel this calling with Brazilian fitness, but it seemed too big and scary, like I mentioned. And maybe some of you can relate to what I'm talking about. Because for me, it was like, okay, God, like, I know this is what you want me to do, but how? Like, with what money, with what resources? So, I came here, I started working again as a personal trainer, teaching group fitness, started teaching our program, Brazily Dance, with my husband once in a while. And then I got pregnant right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so now my daughter is 4. And after, like, obviously struggled with adapting to become a mom, it was just like, if you're a mom, you understand. It's like your whole world does a complete 180. We're like, oh, this is my life now. But when she was about 1 and, I got her into daycare, I was like, you know what? It's now or never. And I think that becoming a mom gave me that extra push that I needed to really just follow my heart, right? And also it was very important for me to do what I feel like I'm called to do, because I want my daughter to feel that way when she gets older, to realize that she can chase whatever dream she has, like no matter what it is, she can do it, right? So it's so important for me to show her that, like, you know what, mom had nothing when she started and look what she's been able to do. And I'm not just talking about, financial success. I'm talking about living your life with authenticity and feeling fulfilled, like feeling like you're responding to that purpose, right? Because I think that's the secret. It's not just settling for a job or something that you're not meant to do. It's just about living your life on your terms. And yeah, so the rest is history. So I've been working on Brazily Fitness for just under 3 years now, and it's been an amazing experience. We've presented at fitness conventions across Canada and the US. We're now getting into universities, getting instructors certified. We have a web app so you can dance with us from home. And the goal is, like I said, it's to help people dance themselves brave, because you can do big things, you can do hard things, but you have to allow yourself to be a beginner and start from the beginning, fall down, get back up, and keep going, because you're destined for great things and you just need to believe in yourself. So just wanted to share that with you. I have amazing episodes lined up for you, amazing interviews. So I've talked to dancers, dance instructors, choreographers about their journeys with dance and showcasing how they struggled in the beginning, and how they overcame those struggles and how that affects them in their lives today. Because that's what is super important for me to show, that everyone starts somewhere. Like for me, I didn't start dancing as a kid. I started much older, like I mentioned. Even though my parents are Brazilian, I have that Brazilian blood. I wasn't like the typical, Brazilian who learns how to samba in their diapers. Like that was not me. So I learned much later. And I remember going to Brazilian dance classes and I just did not get any of the moves. So I would go home and practice in front of the mirror and, like get excited to go back to the next class to try again. And it's funny because now people come to my class, they're like, oh, you make it look so easy. Oh, it's in your blood. I'm like, guys, I've been dancing for 25 years now. Like I've been teaching for 20. So it didn't happen overnight. So why do we as human beings expect to be at a level that, our mentors, our instructors are at, if like on our first day, right? Like don't compare someone's day 100 with your day 1. Right? Like think about just starting out and just remember that there's nothing wrong with you if you don't get it the first time. Like that's just life, right? We don't get things like the first time we try them. And I think as adults, like we start working in our careers, maybe we've gone through schooling, we've gotten really comfortable with the work that we do, and it starts to become repetitive. It starts to become more automatic, right? So then when we start to try new things, we think like, oh my God, why is it so hard? And that's just reality, right? Anything new is going to feel challenging, but that is the beauty of life, is just facing those challenges and who you become along the way. So if you are a dance instructor, dance fitness instructor, amazing interviews coming up with tips on how to grow your business, to increase your impact, which is super important for me too, because I believe that we're all in this together, no matter what format you teach. Like there's someone out there looking for you specifically to help them in whatever struggle that they're facing in their lives. So remember, there's always something you can learn. I'm all about collaboration. So working together and finding a way just to bring more joy and confidence and love to the world. So thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode. And I look forward to chatting with you for future episodes, and make sure that you leave a review, subscribe to our channel. Leaving a review is actually the best way to expand our reach so we get in front of more people who need this, positive reinforcement, maybe that little nudge to start dancing a little bit more, to just have more joy in their lives. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Dance Yourself Brave show. If today's episode got you hyped, inspired, or just made you want to bust a move, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear today's message. Sharing is caring after all. And hey, don't forget, your courage is already in you. Sometimes you just gotta dance it out to feel it. Catch you next time. Keep shining and keep dancing yourself brave.